Hello and a warm welcome to our esteemed audience and distinguished speakers, Excellencies, members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues and supporters. I have the honor to open this special day of the 2021 International Security Forum Bonn. I am Maximilian Meyer, a junior professor of international relations and global politics of technology at the University of Bonn. On behalf of University of Bonn and the CASIS, I want to express our gratitude for the terrific support by all partners, funders, and the entire team here at the CASIS, which makes this four-day event possible. We have the privilege and the burden to live in a time of great upheavals, such as the ramifications of a rapidly modernizing China, the shift of the geopolitical center of gravity towards the Asia-Pacific region, but also a horrific pandemic that still costs 8,000 lives per day. All of these complexities raise in an unprecedented way the demand for smart statecraft, for intellectual creativity and new thinking, for intercultural exchange and interdisciplinary approaches in research, in political decision-making, and in diplomacy. Set against this backdrop, we are going to discuss today European responses to China's new global role. Yesterday, the rector of our university, Professor Hoch, and Minister Ursula Heinen-Esser mentioned the great efforts needed to transform our societies and economies towards a more sustainable future. Given its population, its industrial progress and technological drive, China inevitably plays a central role in this process. The country is, as the European Union emphasizes, a partner in global governance, in trade and investment, as well as in research and development. Technology and innovation are, of course, also a matter of competition. China's hardening ideological stance, however, make the country also a formidable systemic competitor. Different values complicate the maintenance of a stable political order and efficient global governance. How Europe should respond to the complexities of China's global presence and authoritarian power is going to be a critical strategic question for decades. Our panelists today address different dimensions and nuances of this question, ranging from public global goods to technology, climate change, and development. We especially appreciate that American and Chinese colleagues made it possible to join our debates across time zones and perhaps technical barriers. Given the newly established defense partnership between the US, Australia, and the UK, AUKUS, the timing is perfect to discuss the Sino-US confrontations, not only with Norbert Röttgen, who just joined us here, welcome, but also with His Excellency Philip Green, the Australian ambassador to Germany and Switzerland. Now, please let me introduce the speakers of this introductory session in order of their welcoming remarks. First is Professor Volker Cronenberg, the Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Professor at the Institute of Political Science and Sociology, as well as Honorary Professor at the Rhein-Sieg University of Applied Sciences. Dean Cronenberg can't be here with us in person today, but was so kind to record a video speech to which we're going to listen now.
Ambassadors Green and Brengelmann, Mr. Röttgen and Mr. Lechte, Major Dörner, State Secretary Kerber, Mr. Fischer-Bolin, dear colleagues, distinguished guests and friends of the Center for Advanced Security, Strategic and Integration Studies and the International Security Forum in particular. It is with great pleasure that I am accepting Professor Hill's and Professor Meyer's invitation, who kindly asked me to deliver some opening remarks at the beginning of today's special focus day of this year's International Security Forum here at the University of Bonn. And on behalf of the Faculty of Arts, I want to welcome you to this event, which has become a true cornerstone, not only in debating new trends In the broad field of strategic and security challenges the world is facing and discussing recent research thereof, but also continuing the long tradition of political science at the University of Bonn in connecting academia and academic knowledge and actors of the political sphere. As one of the co-directors of CASIS and on behalf of the Faculty of Arts, I not only want to thank the co-hosting, cooperating and supporting entities of this year's forum, the American Institute for Contemporary German Studies, the America House NRW, the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom, the George Marshall European Center for Security Studies, the German Atlantic Association, the German Council on Foreign Relations, and Seidel Foundation, the Institut Français, and the Konrad Adenauer Foundation for their appreciated cooperation, but also and especially the staff of CASIS. I may have said it before, but I just have to say it again. It is not only their profound knowledge in the studies of security, strategic and European integration, not only their hard work, but also their decision, which is one of the main reasons for CASIS not only becoming a true pillar of interdisciplinary research on strategy and security, but is key in organizing such an interesting event with researchers and holders of public office of the highest quality, such as the ones you are about to witness later in this day. Needless to say that this characterization also applies to the holder of such a public office, who is about to deliver today's keynote speech after I finished my welcoming remarks. Mr. Röttgen, first of all, let me congratulate you upon your re-election to the German Bundestag, winning the support of your constituency in 8 consecutive elections. Although this hints to the obviously very much appreciated effort you put into your work as a representative of the people in the Rhine-Sieg era, you are not only their voice in Berlin, no, you have become one of the most significant voices in the public foreign and security policy discourse in Germany, and I might add, rightful so. But if we for once stray outside the circles of academia, think tanks, political and diplomatic professionals, some might ask themselves what public German foreign policy discourse. For sure, for a few days, the unfortunate events surrounding the withdrawal of NATO troops from Afghanistan catapulted foreign and security policy issues. Rather, this foreign and security policy issue on the top of the German news media's agenda. A few days after 20 years of war, a term which German politicians have avoided for as long as almost 10 years of wartime in Afghanistan, foreign policy was front and center in the German news media, as well as in many conversations between private citizens. But a few days after the NATO withdrawal from Afghanistan, after the Taliban takeover and the messy evacuation of local staff, and although Germany was in the midst of a decisive election campaign, the public debate in Germany's foreign and security policy fell silent again. Of course, it is not news that the German public is especially reluctant to debate such issues. And of course, being very much aware of our nation's troubled past, it had its good reasons. So in the 1990s, not only the German public, but also the government did not feel ready to take the hand of the US President George H.W. Bush, who, after reunification, offered them leadership and partnership. Even as, for the first time in the history of post-war Germany, on the verge of the new millennium, Bundeswehr troops were deployed for a combat mission in the Balkans and has since been engaged in out-of-area missions multiple times. And, of course, to this day, the German public still met those engagements with friendly indifference, as former Federal President Horst Köhler once put it. And to this day, the German public is ignoring the several wake-up calls sent by our allies to take more responsibility in fostering what is left of the multilateral world order Germany's economic prosperity is relying on in many ways. So it should at least be today's topic, China's global role, that should finally bring foreign and security policy in all their facets into the narrower focus of the German public debate. Considering China as Germany's long time and the European Union's biggest trading partner since 2020, with the Obama administration's 2012 pivot to Asia, with parts of Europe taking part in China's Belt and Road Initiative, while through NATO, for instance, remaining strategically closely tied to the United States, with most recently an increasingly hard-fought trade conflict between the United States and the Middle Kingdom. And last but not least, the global problem of a changing climate. The questions that you will be discussing today will shape the future of Europe for decades, if not for the remainder of this still young century. Is there a possibility of global problem solving with China? Problems which can hardly be solved without it. How to avoid the second worst scenario of a Cold War II? What risks lie ahead for Europe? What should be Europe's priorities? What strategic opinions are available to it? What can we learn from an Indo-Pacific middle powers experiences with China? What does systemic competition mean for democracies? A question that will be discussed under the chair of Mrs. Senaldin, Executive Director of the just recently founded, very, very important NRW Academy of International Affairs. Mrs. Senaldin, let me extend an especially warm welcome to you. And please let me stress that the scientific community in Bonn is very much pleased that the state of North Rhine-Westphalia has decided to establish this new academy right here, and thereby to further strengthen the United Nations city Bonn as a center of science and international understanding. But now, Mr. Röttgen, I think we are all curious about your thoughts on the first question of this special focus day regarding China's new global role. Will Europe stand its ground? Distinguished guests, I wish you good, insightful discussions and an illuminating as well as entertaining conference day. Thank you very much.
Thanks to our Dean, Professor Cronenberg. Our next speaker is Katja Dörner. She is the mayor of the city of Bonn, and that means she governs the most beautiful city along the Rhine River. Before that, Katja Dörner served as a member of the German parliament for 11 years, where she was, among other things, the vice chair of the Green Party's parliamentary group. Mayor Dörner continues the tradition of her predecessor in support of the International Security Forum, and we are very happy that you are with us here today, despite serious time pressures. We look forward to your remarks, Mayor Dörner.
Thank you very much, dear Professor Dr. Meyer, dear Dr. Fischer-Bolin, dear Norbert Röttgen. Congratulations also from my side, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for inviting me to participate in the International Security Forum Bonn 2021. On behalf of the City of Bonn, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all participants. As mayor of Bonn, I'm of course delighted that this forum, unless taking place digitally like this year, is being held here in Bonn and with the participation of numerous renowned Bonn-based institutions. The International Security Forum Bonn, organized by the Center for Advanced Security, Strategic and International Studies, CASIS, at the University of Bonn, has developed in recent years into a high-level international exchange on topical issues and special challenges in foreign and security policy. This year, you have once again put together an impressive program with top-class speakers, on which I congratulate you very much. With the foundation of CASIS, the University of Bonn underlines its competence and claim to make a scientific contribution to security policy and strategic research in Northern Rhine-Westphalia and in Germany as a whole. At the same time, it successfully strengthens Bonn's profile as the German United Nations city and as an international center of competence in Germany. Global challenges need European answers. This is also the guiding principle behind today's discussion, which addresses the question of what answers Europe has to China's growing global importance. As mayor of the city of Bonn, I cannot, of course, give you a satisfactory answer to this question. I will leave that to the experts who will have their say in the course of the day. However, I am convinced that in order to survive in international competition, we as Europeans must streamline our efforts more effectively. We must join forces and position ourselves more strategically. We need a strong Europe that is capable of acting and that stands up for democracy, the rule of law, and human rights across the globe, also and especially when dealing with countries and regions that have different values and ideas. This requires that we strengthen our European institution, first and foremost the European Parliament. To this end, it may be necessary, especially in the area of foreign and security policy, to move from unanimity to majority decision in co-decision by the European Parliament in the future. But Europe also needs more transparency and opportunities for citizens to engage and participate. The Conference on the Future of Europe offers the opportunity to shape reforms in the EU from the bottom up. That means at grassroots level. One example of this is a citizens' dialogue that we have successfully organized in Bonn. Inspiring our citizens to become involved and raising awareness for European values within the European Union will help us to stand united and successfully advocate these values in other parts of the globe. Another contribution to more cooperation and participation across Europe is a strengthening of city partnerships and mutual encounters. This naturally also applies to the European-Chinese context and to the German-Chinese context in particular. For example, Bonn has successfully maintained a strong partnership with Chengdu, the capital of Sichuan province, since the late 1990s. In recent years, we have carried out various projects in the context of municipal cooperation, including in the field of climate and environmental protection and the promotion of sustainable urban development. We also promote encounters and the exchange between the two cities within the framework of school partnerships and cultural projects. I am convinced that people-to-people communication, mutual encounters, and the involvement of citizens as are taking place within the framework of municipal partnerships contribute to a spirit of cooperation, a sense of togetherness that is characterized by mutual trust. At the same time, these friendly ties help to promote our values and convictions at the international level. This year, Bonn is celebrating its 25th anniversary as Germany's United Nations city. On June 20 in 1996, the flag of the United Nations was ceremoniously hoisted in Bonn in front of Haus Kastanien in the presence of the then UN Secretary General Boutros Ghali. The establishment of the United Nations Volunteers Program and shortly thereafter the Climate Change Secretariat laid the foundation of Bonn's development into the German city of the United Nations. Today, Bonn is a center for international dialogue on global issues of the future, such as climate, health, the protection of biodiversity, and the promotion of sustainable development. I'm convinced that we will only be able to solve the global challenges of our time, which of course include dealing with the crises and conflicts together and in dialogue with each other. With this in mind, I am hoping for strong momentum to emerge from this event. I wish you all an interesting and inspiring discussion along with many new insights for all participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mayor Dörner, especially also for mentioning the bottom-up approach. And I remember last time we met, you just came out of such a meeting with mayors from other cities. I think that's always the people-to-people level is something we have to think and link better with the security dimensions and the strategic dimensions for building trust. So thanks for your great work in that regard and for being with us here.
Thank you.
Our next speaker in line is Dr. Peter Fischer-Bolin, who heads the Division Analysis and Consulting of the Konrad Adenauer Foundation in Berlin. Welcome, Dr. Fischer-Bolin. At this point, let me just briefly thank especially the Adenauer Foundation with its Berlin offices, but also with various country offices in Asia Pacific for the great collaboration we have. We are doing various projects together, both in terms of research, but also in terms of track 2 and track 1.5 exchanges. This event today is the product of trust and long-term close cooperation between the Konrad Adenauer Foundation and the CASIS, which we hope, of course, to continue in the coming years. And in this spirit, Dr. Fischer-Bolin, please share some of your thoughts with us.
Thank you very much, dear Mrs. Mayor Katja Dörner, dear re-elected member of Parliament Norbert Röttgen, dear Professor Meyer, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure and my honor to welcome you here from Berlin to this special focus day on China on behalf of Konrad Adenauer Foundation. The Rise of Eastern Modernity, European Response to China's New Global Role is the title. From my point of view, the subject of our special focus day has been well selected and well defined, because it's prompting us to reflect on at least 4 dimensions of the Chinese challenge. The first, the economical and the technological challenge. Second, the geopolitical challenge. Third, the political, or let's say the autocratical challenge. And fourth, and I think that is very important for us to realize, the cultural and social-cultural challenge. Not all these dimensions have been realized by us at the same time or at the same moment. Us meant in that sense as Germans and Europeans. My personal impression as a non-expert on China is that we are still in a phase to realize how comprehensive these Chinese challenges are for us. And therefore, how comprehensive our response must be in order to maintain our level of liberal democracy, of freedom, justice, rule of law, of prosperity, security, and not at least modernity, European modernity, European way of life. It has taken us more than 75 years, or at least 3 generations, to achieve that level. And we should recognize that securing that European modernity in the face of the Chinese challenge will take up at least our willingness to study and learn, to adapt to changing circumstances, to define our interests, and to look for instruments to build up and develop our relationship with China and with our partners in North America and around the globe, aiming at the benefit of all nations. For us as Konrad Adenauer Foundation, it is clear that we have to include all these dimensions in our comprehensive approach. Working in Germany, in every EU member state, and also in many countries around the globe, including the United States of America and China itself. We want to contribute with this conference and its participants from Europe, United States, and China to a better understanding of the ongoing processes. That is why we are grateful to the University of Bonn with CASIS for giving us for the 3rd time the opportunity to participate with a special focus day in the Bonn International Security Forum. Thank you very much, Professor Meyer, on behalf of the University of Bonn. I want to thank all the speakers, and especially Norbert Röttgen as our keynote speaker of today's program. And I look forward to learning from you and your insights, and to promote an open and transparent discussion on the challenges which are put to us by China. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Fischer-Bolin, for this message from Berlin. Today we are sort of two sides, like people from Berlin and we here in Bonn. In this moment, I also want to welcome all the audience probably just joined us now. Welcome to this special focus day of the International Security Forum Bonn. But now please welcome together with me Dr. Norbert Röttgen, who was just re-elected as a member of parliament. Also my congratulations, dear Norbert Röttgen, for this great success. Norbert Röttgen, let me mention that just briefly, is also an alumnus of Bonn University. He has been the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the German Bundestag since 2014, and from 2009 to 2012 he was the Federal Minister of Environment, Nature Conservation and Nuclear Safety. Dr. Röttgen has been a member of the German Parliament since 1994. And as the Dean mentioned already, he regularly raises strategic issues, not just China, but also broader foreign policy, European foreign policy, German foreign policy, into the limelight of public debates. We feel therefore honored, dear Norbert Röttgen, that you also were willing to act as the patron of this year's special focus day. And with much further ado, I want to give you the floor for your remarks on a superpower, in brackets, in the making. Please, the floor is yours, Mr. Röttgen.
Thank you very much, Professor Meyer, for your kind introduction and invitation. I want to welcome also all the other participants, Peter Fischer-Bolin, and all those who are joining us on this important debate. Thank you so much for your kind words of congratulations to my constituency re-election. However, I have to connect and I have to challenge from the perspective of my constituency, I have to challenge your assessment you made earlier that the city of Bonn is the most beautiful city located immediately at River Rhine, since my constituency comprises 3 cities immediately located at River Rhine. I have, as I mentioned, to challenge the assessment, and I want to invite you, for example, to the city of Königswinter to get convinced about the beauty of this city. But apart from these local remarks, it's important to combine the local with the global as we do it. I want to jump into the topic, which of course is a most appreciated detraction from the topic of the days and these weeks after the election we have. We have exciting days in the country, and we will see how a new German government is coming into the making. But I want to now reflect on the topic I have been asked to elaborate a little bit on. It's the question or the statement, a superpower, in brackets, superpower in the making, China, and will Europe stand its ground in contesting, facing, dealing with this power or even superpower? So what is China? In my view, China is already a great power, yes, and indeed a superpower in the making. China has the power to fundamentally change and dominate the international order, which is also order in the making, and which is most important, China has the will to not further accept what it calls and considers to be the Pax Americana as the paradigm of the post-war international order, where China was not a power in coining and influencing this order. And now China is convinced that it has increased its power so massively that it creates a legitimacy for China now to also influence international order. In an in-between period of the development of international order, the big circle, historic circle after the war has come to an end. The Cold War order is over, and all what has constituted this order. But of course, a new international order is yet to come into existence, and we are particularly in a particularly important and defining in-between period. This is defined by the competition and even the fight about the architecture and power distribution of a new international order. And China is absolutely determined and convinced that it has a right to be a major player, even dominant player and contributor to a new international order. Europe, in return, is certainly a trade power, a world trade power, but geopolitically not yet the relevant actor we aspire to be. And the crucial question for us is whether or not Europe can stand its ground in relation to China as part of a Western alliance. And this very much depends on whether we manage to transform ourselves, the European project, from a successful, extremely unique, historically unique, successful internal project into a foreign policy player. This is the question of European relevance or irrelevance. If we successfully manage to transform ourselves from internal to external and to forge also an external identity as an acting, influencing power on the global stage, which we have not yet achieved. I want to briefly describe the elements, in my view, most important elements which constitute global power and influence of China, which has risen in recent decades and particularly years. Economically, the first element of Chinese power. The US certainly are still the world's largest economy, but China is on track of surpassing the United States economically, which could happen as early as 2028. With its 1.4 billion people, China has a huge internal market, and its economic policy in recent months and years is more and more focusing on developing the internal market, also as a tool to become more independent from the global economic developments. Technologically, China has made huge advances and is home to some of the fastest growing tech companies in the world. In telecommunications, 5G rollout, Huawei is one of the world's leading players, equally e-commerce. At the same time, China remains dependent in other technologies, especially when it comes to semiconductors, primarily manufactured in Taiwan, USA, Japan. China is lagging behind around about 8 up to 10 years, and there has remained an important interest and dependency on industrial technologies, as particularly Germany is able to construct, to provide, and to export. So there is a mutual relationship. There is not a dependency of Germany from China only, but there is a mutual high interest in exchanging different technologies and capacities and products. Investment. As part of the Belt and Road Initiative, China has made huge infrastructure investments all over the world, which have led in many countries to dependencies which China is not afraid to politically exploit. And even more so, China explicitly uses economic dependencies, creates economic dependencies by creating debt and debt dependencies as a tool of influencing, as a tool of foreign policy and influencing other countries. Institutions, China has strategically managed to staff bottleneck positions in international institutions. The WHO is a point which has, and an example which has been become publicly during the pandemic. And as a consequence, the purpose of the institutions is not longer and not longer only to oversee and enforce rules for the general benefit of the international community, but it is, but there is significant Chinese influence within the institutions in order to pursue Chinese interests from inside United Nations and international institutions. So this is a strategic policy to use and exploit global institutions for national interests, which is accompanied by a certain kind of naivety from other countries, both the international community and Western countries. Militarily, China rapidly advances its military capabilities, especially its conventional forces, but also its nuclear arsenal. And this is partly why the INF Treaty has failed to be renewed. It's not only the American, the US, Russia competition in this field, but also Russia, of course, recognizes and assesses the rise of the nuclear arsenal in China. China uses its military capabilities, particularly in the Indo-Pacific, to create facts in contested territories, particularly the South China Sea, by deploying warships and creating islands in the South China Sea, which are then used as military bases. So again, also the military increase of power is used to increase global political power by China. We have to see, not to complain, but to soberly assess that China is a country, perhaps the only country, which is really pursuing a long-term strategy regarding its international role, its economy, its technology, and the military basis for international influence. So what we can see, to sum up, is that China clearly has achieved a mass of power in different areas to globally influence relations, and that first and foremost and most crucially, China has the will to change, shape international order, not sharing the principles of the post-war order, which has aspired to be a rules-based order, but it intends to replace the principle of rules and international law by the acceptance of Chinese interests, of course, solely defined by China. So this is the contested crucial point in our relationships. And this is why Europe cannot stand by and consider China's rise a matter of power competition with the US only. China has the potential and the will to affect not only our interests, but the very way we live, based on personal freedoms, on democracy, on the rule of law, and not on the principle of power, and that the strongest power is the most influential. This is a fundamentally different understanding how international relations should be characterized and defined. My third and final aspect is how does Europe have to respond to China's rise in the different areas? I think there are three main realms in which we need to define our interests and in which we have to assess our capabilities, how to deal with China. The first realm is trade. As I've already mentioned, trade. Europe is a world trade power and is using this power, and this is a significant element of Europeans' outreach on the global stage. However, we have up to now not achieved reciprocity even in our trade relationships. China does not accept reciprocity. China claims to have full access to the European and to the German market, but is not accepting this in reciprocity because it wants to protect the Chinese market and does not accept full mutual competition on the home market. Our economic leverage and window of opportunity in the trade realm is decreasing. China, of course, is aware of the mutual dependencies which still exist. And for this reason, China intends and is determined to become more self-sufficient and less dependent on our technological know-how. It's increasing the internal market and the strength of the internal market, and has started to develop the concept of two-circle economies. China wants to create an internal independent market and wants to be at the same time a part of the global economy, but without being dependent on global foreign countries, but wants instead to be self-sufficient in its economic supply and production. The second realm where we have to deal with China is the regional theater, the Indo-Pacific. We need to develop an understanding of what we realistically can and cannot achieve in the region. Trying to achieve military relevance in the Indo-Pacific is, in my view, would be an overstretch of European naval capabilities. I can't consider European power in the foreseeable future to be a relevant military factor, maritime factor in the Indo-Pacific. We are facing the insecurities in our neighborhood, in the East, particularly also in the South, in the Near and Middle East, in Northern Africa. And this will further develop to be a European responsibility. We have seen the withdrawal of the United States from Afghanistan. We have seen other decisions of the United States. The United States certainly is absolutely in its foreign policy focused on the challenge by China, and the most recent security alliance between the United States, Australia, and the United Kingdom shows that China and the Indo-Pacific have become the centerpiece in American foreign policy, that the United States is developing an alliance policy, is forging alliances and cooperation in the region. And from the region, the United States is considered to be the security provider and supplier. And we have to be realistic. This will not be a theater for Europe, for European action, because we do not have the relevant capabilities and will not do so also in the future. But this does, of course, not mean that we should not be engaged in the region, because this was only related to the military aspect of regional engagement of the Europeans in the Indo-Pacific. On the contrary, we have to be engaged in the Indo-Pacific. We should link our engagement in the region to the economic and normative power we have. South Asia and Southeast Asia are in desperate search for investment from outside of China in order to balance China and decrease their dependencies. As of now, regional actors do not want to pick sides, as they are dependent both on the United States in security terms and as well on China economically wise. So there is European engagement politically, economically, in enhancing and increasing our trade relations is most welcome from nearly all of the Southeast countries and the entire region, to balance the influence of the great superpowers, the superpower and the great powers which are engaged in the region. The third realm where we have to engage is the realm of values. Values are probably the crucial element of Europe's response to China, as they are linked to our identity and provide our actions with meaning and direction. And the same is true for China. China explicitly rejects the so-called liberal values and is certain that it is the Chinese values are superior and are better fit to compete with the challenges of the 21st century. So China explicitly accepts this normative competition between China and the Western world. We do not want conflict with China, but when it comes to our values, including human rights and the rule of law, which we consider to be universal, we have to be strong and bold. We will not earn the respect of China if we present ourselves to be ready to compromise of what constitutes our own identity. China certainly does not even consider to compromise on its identity, and we will earn shame and not respect by China if we do not stand up for what is our very identity. If we do not resist China's attempts to change the principles of international order in favor of Chinese interests, instead of being based on rules our own values and interests, our own values and interests will be in danger. As I mentioned, it's about interest, but it's about more than interest. It's about the international order and our way of life. It's about the question of whether we are ready to sustain and defend our conviction and our way of life, which has to be underlined by an international order guaranteeing human rights and safeguarding human rights and the rule of law. Having the will to do so, to stand up what is our notion of freedom and values, is a starting point. But we will not be successful without maintaining technological leadership and thereby economic weight. The conflict we have, the systemic conflict, is a normative institutional one. The field where this conflict will be decided upon is technology and economic weight. And therefore, in my view, the most crucial element of the Western response is technology, or to put it in another order. The first consequence is that if there is a conflict about norms between Chinese norms and values and Western liberal values, it should be a liberal and thereby Western response to the Chinese challenge. And since the area where this conflict will be decided will be the area of technological and economic leadership, it should be a Western liberal response in the field of technology and economy. And therefore, the creation of the EU-US Technology and Trade Council was a major and is a major strategic attempt to forge technological and trade unity, to pursue a technological and global economic strategy, to create Western strength, not against China, but in order to cooperate with China, but from the position of strength, based on values, convinced of our values, but also developing crucial strengths in the field of technology and economy. And for this reason, we must not allow that this strategic element in our China policy, of Western China policy, to be taken hostage for other conflicts. So this committee and council should not be postponed, but it should be enhanced and should be quickly filled with real substance, because I do consider this to be the most essential and concrete element of a Western strategy vis-à-vis China. Thank you very much.
Mr. Röttgen, thank you very much for sharing these remarks. In the light of the upcoming panels today, we unfortunately have to wrap up this panel here. I'm pretty sure there are a lot of questions out there and issues. I think that the theme you set, that we have this normative institutional contestation on the one hand, and the other hand, we have a deeply economical and technological interdependence, and that kind of tension between the two of those, that's something which is also animating the upcoming panels a lot. So thanks again for being with us despite the time pressure and the certainly very interesting times post-election. We wish you luck with all the consultations ongoing. Also, thanks for all the other speakers and the remarks in this panel. Let me just do a quick note for housekeeping. We are moving to the room 2 now, and in the next session we will discuss and listen and talk with Markus Kerber, the State Secretary at the Federal Ministry of the Interior. For the following panels, we switch from a live streaming mode into Chatham House rules, and I welcome you in room 2 just after a very brief break. Thanks again, and have a nice day for all of you. To Berlin, Mr. Fischer-Bolin, Mr. Röttgen, also thank for the mayor who has already left us.